You wake up and the ground hums. Not a rumble of thunder, not an earthquake. A slow, heavy rhythm, like a heartbeat you feel through the soles of your feet. You press your cheek to the cool earth, and you see it. Massive, gray-brown. Tusks curving like tree branches grown over decades. A woolly mammoth, taller than your house, heavier than a truck, walking past your camp as if you do not exist. You do not chase it. You do not wave your spear. You just watch until it melts into the fog. For most of human history, this was not a fantasy. This was a Tuesday. Your ancestors shared their world with giants. Creatures so large they would not fit through the doors of any building you have ever entered. And then, in the blink of a geological eye, they were gone. 99% of the largest animals that once walked the earth no longer walk anywhere. You are living in a world already emptied of its monsters. The question is, who emptied it? In 1967, a paleontologist named Paul Martin was staring at a map. He was not studying fossils for the love of bones. He was looking for a pattern, and he found one that has haunted archaeology ever since. Wherever humans arrived, the giants followed them into extinction. In Australia, humans arrive about 65,000 years ago. Giant kangaroos, wombats the size of cars, lizards with claws like sickles, all gone soon after. In the Americas, humans walk across the Bering Land Bridge. And within a few thousand years, woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, creatures with no evolutionary fear of humans, all vanish. In Madagascar, in New Zealand, in the Caribbean, the same story repeats. Paul Martin called it overkill. His model was simple. Human hunters spread. Large animals that had never seen a predator like us were easy targets, and one by one they fell. It sounded brutal. And for a long time it was the accepted story. But your ancestors were better hunters than you give them credit for. And they were also smarter than the story gives them credit for. Because when you look closer, the evidence starts to crack. Let's reconstruct a scene. It is 13,000 years ago, in what you would call North America. Your family is part of a small band, maybe 30 people. You have spent generations learning a new way to eat. You are Clovis people, named after the distinctive spear points you carry. Your tools are sharp, your aim is steady, but you are not an army. You are a handful of families scattered across a continent the size of a planet. And there are, at the most generous estimate, a few 100,000 humans on the entire landmass. And there are millions of mammoths. Think about that math for a second. A few 100,000 hunters. Tens of millions of enormous roaming animals. Could you really kill them all? Archaeologists who are not so sure point to the bone record. If humans hunted megafauna to extinction, you would expect to find lots of butchered skeletons, spear points embedded in ribs, cut marks on leg bones. In a few places, you find exactly that, and the evidence is beautiful. But across thousands of fossil sites, the total number of mammoth bones with clear human-made weapons or cut marks can be counted on your fingers. So the overkill hypothesis has been revised, not abandoned, revised, because the alternative is even more uncomfortable. Most scientists now believe something called a perfect storm, and your ancestors were one of the winds. Here's what the evidence stack looks like now. The climate at the end of the last ice age was not stable. It was a roller coaster. Temperatures swung wildly, vegetation shifted, habitats dissolved into patches. The giant animals that had thrived for hundreds of thousands of years suddenly found their food sources breaking apart. Then, into this fragile landscape, a new predator arrives. Not many of them, but enough. Enough to push a wobbling species over the edge. Think of a glass already teetering on the edge of a table. A single nudge can send it crashing. But the nudge is not the whole story. The La Brea tar pits in California tell this part of the story beautifully. In the tar, you can see the full menagerie that once lived side by side. Saber-toothed cats with massive canine teeth, dire wolves, giant ground sloths, mammoths, a bird with a wingspan wider than your arms. For hundreds of thousands of years, these species coexisted. Then, roughly at the same moment, humans begin to appear in the fossil layers. The parade ends. On Wrangel Island, a frozen Arctic island off the coast of Siberia, the last woolly mammoths on Earth survived until about 4,000 years ago. That is after the pyramids, after Stonehenge. The Great Pyramids of Egypt were already rising when the last mammoth took its final breath in the Arctic twilight. Humans did not live on Wrangel Island at the time. No spear points, no hunters. The mammoths there died out on their own, in a slow genetic spiral that DNA studies have traced. In 2017, researchers sequencing the genome of the last mammoths found evidence of a population so small that harmful mutations piled up like snow. They were inbreeding. They were slowly losing their sense of smell. And eventually, their numbers simply collapsed. So you cannot say humans killed all the giants everywhere. Some giants died by climate, others died by our hands. Most probably died by both, and that is the real lesson. Your ancestors did not decide one day to wipe out the world's megafauna. They were not super predators with a plan. They were just another animal, doing what animals do, surviving, expanding, eating. The difference is they had tools: fire, coordination, memory. They could take down a creature they could not beat in a fair fight. And once the biggest animals started disappearing, the entire ecosystem began to reorganize around their absence. This is the part nobody tells you. The extinction of the giants was not just a tragedy that left skeletons in museums. It changed the shape of the earth itself. Large herbivores keep grasslands healthy by grazing and trampling. They spread seeds in their dung. They knock down trees and open up the landscape. When woolly mammoths disappeared from the Arctic, the grasslands they maintained were replaced by mossy, shrubby tundra, the kind of cold, wet ground we know today. The mammoth prairie died with them. A whole ecosystem vanished because the keystone animal holding it together was gone. Now look at yourself. You sit in your kitchen, and you may feel none of this history. But the reason you still care about elephants, the reason you watch a rhino on a screen with something close to awe, that is a ghost memory, a recognition. Your brain knows, underneath all the noise of modern life, that these are the last members of a royal line, and they are dying. 99 out of every 100 giant animals are already gone. The ones left are shrinking, fragmenting, retreating into the corners of the world, just like their ancestors did. So who killed the megafauna? Not a villain, not a heroic hunter with a spear. The evidence points to something quieter and more frightening. It was a combination of pressure and fragility, of shaking ground and tipping glass, of a changing climate and a clever predator who did not understand what it was doing until it was done. And you are the descendant of that predator. That may be the strangest thing of all. The mass extinction your ancestors helped trigger made them more human, smarter, more flexible, more capable of surviving on a planet that no longer handed them easy meals. And now the question turns back to you. The giants are not coming back, but you live in a world that is changing just as fast. Species are disappearing on your watch. The ecosystems you depend on are wobbling, and this time you know the end of the story. Consider the research of David Burney, a paleoecologist, who spent decades studying the bones and pollen grains trapped in Madagascar's ancient swamps. His work revealed the same pattern in miniature. Humans arrive, giant lemurs, elephant birds, pygmy hippos, all gone within centuries. But his data also showed something else. The forests did not die because the animals died. The animals died because the forests were being burned and cleared, patch by patch, by a growing human population. The climate was changing too. But the killing was not one clean blow. It was death by 1,000 cuts, delivered over generations, by people who had no idea they were doing it. That is the uncomfortable truth. Extinction is rarely a moment. It is a process. It is a slow narrowing of options, a steady shrinking of room to live. And by the time the last individual is gone, the real damage was done decades earlier. Your ancestors did not witness the extinction of the mammoth. They witnessed the disappearance of one herd, then another, then another. And each time, they probably told themselves the animals had simply moved on. They went somewhere else. They will come back. But they did not come back. The same logic runs through your modern life. You read about a species vanishing, and you feel a twinge. Then the feed moves on, the ice melts, the forest thins, the coral bleaches. And each individual change seems small, like a single snowflake in a storm. But you are already living inside the extinction event. You are not watching it from the outside. You are one of the winds. There is a word for this in geology, the Anthropocene. It is the name scientists give to our current era, a time when the dominant force shaping the planet is not a glacier, not an asteroid, but you. Human activity, agriculture, cities, roads, fishing fleets. The invisible webs of commerce that link your breakfast to a farm on another continent. The Anthropocene began slowly, with the first campsite, the first fire, the first spear point left in the rib of a mammoth. And it has grown into something your ancestors could not possibly have imagined. They did not know what they were doing. They had no hindsight, no data, no fossil record to warn them. They were flying blind through the most consequential change their species had ever caused. You, on the other hand, have the entire story laid out in front of you. You have the tar pits. You have the ancient DNA. You have the island mammoths dying in their slow genetic spiral. You have every lesson that 100,000 years of trial and error can teach. The question is not whether you are guilty. Guilt is not useful. The question is whether you can see the glass wobbling while there is still time to steady it, because that is what your ancestors actually teach you. Not that they were perfect, not that they were innocent, They teach you that adaptation is the only survival strategy that ever worked. When the giants fell, they changed. They learned. They rebuilt their world around the loss. And in doing so, they became the species that would one day build cathedrals, telescopes, and machines that fly. You carry that capacity inside you right now. The same flexibility, the same stubborn cleverness that refused to let extinction end the story. So when you feel the ground starting to hum again, the slow rhythm of a world reshaping itself, of species disappearing, of weather turning strange, you do not have to pretend you do not feel it. You wake, and the ground is silent. Not because the giants are gone, but because you have finally learned to listen.